The tag on my chair said, "The old woman funding all this." It was printed in bold black letters, all caps, like a joke someone forgot to laugh at. My name wasn't on it. Not even Grandma. Just that. Like I was a corporate sponsor. Like I was a receipt stapled to a wedding. I picked it up with 2 fingers. The cardstock was thick, expensive. I stared at it while the music played, while people clinked their glasses and posed for photos in pastel dresses I helped pay for. David saw me looking. He walked over with a drink in his hand and that smug little half-smile he's worn since he was 13. "What?" he said. "You always said money was your only power left." I didn't say a word. My hand shook just enough to make the tag flutter. And the music kept playing. No one gasped. No one looked over. That was the worst part. Not the insult itself, but how normal it felt to them. How no one blinked. I'm glad you're here. If you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people you raised, stay with me. Like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far my story travels. My name is Eleanor May Aldridge. I'm 72 years old. I was a librarian for 30 years. I've buried a husband, raised a child, helped with 3 grandchildren, and once taught myself how to fix a leaking sink when I didn't have the money to call a plumber. I don't like tea unless it's hot. I fold my laundry the day I wash it, and I cry once a year, whether I need to or not. This was Amelia's wedding, my granddaughter. I helped her pick the dress. We ate scones and drank champagne from paper cups, and she asked me if it was okay to wear her hair down, even though her mother thought it should be up. I told her, "Wear it the way that makes you feel most like yourself." That was 6 months ago. And now I was just a funding source. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. I did what women my age do when we've been insulted in public. I smiled like I didn't understand. Then I turned and walked toward the gift table. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed a moment. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere still. That's when I saw it. A cream envelope with handwriting I recognized instantly. My own. My cursive is old-fashioned, looped and patient, the way we were taught in school when penmanship still meant something. It was addressed to Amelia. I hadn't written her a card for the wedding, but I had written that envelope 2 years ago. I'd saved $25,000 for her college graduation. I never gave it to her. She dropped out, said she wanted to travel with her boyfriend for a while. I'd put the envelope in my safe and forgotten about it. Or thought I had. I picked it up slowly, like it might disappear. Opened it right there, in the corner of the reception hall. The cash was gone. All of it. But the note I wrote was still inside. To Amelia, for every step you take into the future, may this help you land on your feet. Love always, Grandma. I folded the card back up and slipped it into my purse. Back at the table, someone was telling a story about the rehearsal dinner. People were laughing. I stood next to my empty chair and looked down at the place tag again. The old woman funding all this. It was still there, bold, unapologetic. So I left. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't tap my glass or hug the bride. I walked out the back door and into the parking lot, where the sun had started to dip behind the building, casting long orange shadows across the pavement. My car was warm. The silence felt heavier than the music inside. When I got home, I went straight to the safe in my bedroom closet. Combination lock, metal door, 3 shelves. I knew exactly what should have been there. 3 envelopes. One for Amelia, one for my grandson Paul, who wants to study engineering, and one for Lily, the youngest, just 6 years old but already reading novels upside down. I'd saved money for each of them, quietly, steadily, like I always do. Only one envelope remained. Paul's. The others were gone. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the weight of it sink in. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. I thought about how many years I spent saving, how many dinners I said no to, how many coats I patched instead of replaced. Not because I was poor, but because I believed in giving. When David's business went under, I paid his mortgage for 6 months. When Monica needed surgery, I covered the insurance gap. When Amelia asked me to help with the florist, I wrote a check that same day. But none of it was love. Not to them. It was just funding. But that word echoed in my head, over and over. Funding, not family, not presence, not history, just an ATM with a cardigan. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared out the window. The roses were blooming again. Soft, tired petals, like old hands cupped toward the sky. I thought about calling someone. My friend Louise, maybe. Or my cousin Irene. But what would I say? That my family used my handwriting against me? That I'd been robbed with a thank you card? No. I needed something else. I sat at the kitchen table and started writing. Dates. Amounts. Names. Every dollar I'd ever given David over the last 15 years. Every bank transfer. Every favor. Every line of every check. I opened the drawer where I kept old statements, pulled out a manila folder, marked taxes, and then another, marked trusts. One by one, I lined them up like clues. My life on paper. The light above the stove flickered once, then held steady. I stayed there for hours. When the sun rose, I made a fresh pot of coffee and stared at the documents spread across the kitchen floor like puzzle pieces, waiting for someone to care enough to put them together. I did. I pulled the chair closer, tucked my sweater around my shoulders, and kept going. They thought I was soft because I smile at waiters and thank the postman and send birthday cards with glittery stickers on the envelope. They forgot I'm a librarian. I don't lose things. I catalog them. Every slight, every missing envelope, every fake smile. It's all filed, archived, indexed, and soon it'll be shared. But not today. Today, I return the wedding dress receipt to my file and fold the envelope that should have changed Amelia's life and tuck away the place card that told me everything I needed to know. Because now I'm not just a funding source. I'm the historian, and I'm writing it all down. I saw the envelope before I saw the cake. It was tucked behind a vase on the gift table, not hidden exactly, just carelessly placed, cream-colored, heavy, my handwriting. There was no doubt about it. I felt a chill go down my back. It was the envelope I'd written for Amelia's college graduation, not her wedding. I picked it up slowly. My name wasn't on the outside, just to Amelia in my old cursive, the kind nuns used to teach with rulers in hand. I knew what was inside, or what should have been. I had saved $25,000 in that envelope. Quietly, carefully. I didn't tell anyone, not even her. I was going to surprise her when she walked across the stage. She never did. Dropped out of college to travel with Jeremy. Said she needed to find herself. I didn't give her the envelope. I locked it in my safe at home. So how did it end up here? I opened it, shielding it with my purse. The money was gone. The note was still there, folded neat. To Amelia, for every step you take into the future, may this help you land on your feet. Love always, Grandma. My hand tightened around the card. I slipped it into my purse, turned away from the gift table, and walked straight out the hall. I didn't stop to look back. The sun had started to set. The shadows stretched long on the sidewalk, reaching for my feet as I stepped off the curb. My car smelled like old mints and rose lotion. The silence wrapped around me like a coat I hadn't asked for. I didn't cry. I drove home with both hands on the wheel and my jaw locked tight. The moment I got inside, I headed to the closet, moved the old coats aside, pulled back the loose panel, and knelt down in front of the safe. I'd had that safe since before David was born. My husband, Walt, bought it after a break-in 3 streets over. Better safe than sorry, he said. That was his answer to everything. The combination was muscle memory. The dial clicked, the door creaked, my breath caught. 3 envelopes were missing. 1 for Amelia, 1 for Paul, 1 for Lily. Only Paul's was still there. My knees went weak. I sat back on the floor, the metal door still open beside me. The space where the envelopes had been was clean, too clean. Whoever took them didn't tear anything. They just removed them, quietly, like they had the right. I closed the safe and leaned back against the wall. My head touched the cool plaster. My eyes stared up at the ceiling, like answers might be carved there. I remembered the night I sealed those envelopes. It was raining. I'd just finished balancing my monthly budget, and I'd managed to put aside a little extra. I wrote each grandchild's name with care, pressed each bill flat, folded the notes and tucked them away. I felt proud, not rich, but steady, reliable. Now they were gone. I thought back further. David was 8 when Walt died. Car accident, rain-slick highway. 1 minute he was coming home from work, the next he was a photo in a frame. I became everything overnight: mother, father, provider, protector. I went back to work full-time at the library, took on evening shifts, canceled my own dental appointments to pay for his school trips. When David was 19, he wanted to start his own business. Tech repair. I took out a second mortgage. He promised to pay it back in 5 years. It took 15. By then I'd stopped asking. When Monica got sick, ovarian cancer, stage 2, I moved into the guest room, took care of the kids, cooked, cleaned, drove her to appointments, sat in waiting rooms for hours. I told myself it was what mothers do, what grandmothers do. I never expected a thank you. But I didn't expect this. Theft in the shape of trust, smiles hiding fingers that reached into my savings. I stood up slowly, knees stiff. The kind of stiffness that doesn't come from age, but from knowing, the kind you feel when a door you believed was locked has been opened without your permission. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at the sink. They'd been in my home. In my safe? They knew the code. David helped me reset it 3 years ago, when the dial started sticking. I remember him saying, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll write it down for you in case you forget." He never did hand me that paper. He didn't think I'd remember. But I did. The next morning, I walked into the living room, pulled out the family file box, and started flipping through every document I owned: birth certificates, marriage license, deeds, bank statements. Then I made a list. Every time I'd given David money, every time he asked for help and I gave it, every time Monica needed something and I provided. I wasn't keeping score. Not then. Now I had to. The list grew longer than I expected. Every gift I thought I was giving became a reminder of how easily love gets rewritten as debt, when the hands that receive decide to reach again. I sat at the dining table and stared at the envelope from Amelia's wedding. My note was still inside, but the cash, the heart of the gesture, was gone. Stripped, taken, used, without a word. I wondered what they told her. Did they lie and say it was meant for the wedding? Did they pretend it came from them? Or did she know? Did she see my name on the card and smile anyway? I didn't know, and that was the hardest part. I thought about calling her, but what would I say? That I found something that belonged to her, that I'd planned to give it when she graduated, not when she walked down an aisle in a dress I helped pick? No, she'd already made her choice, and I had mine. I stood up, walked back to the closet, and changed the safe's combination. New numbers, ones only I knew. Then I took Paul's envelope and hid it somewhere else, somewhere no one would think to look. I told myself one simple thing: they'd taken enough. They wouldn't take anything else, not from me, not from the children who still had a chance to be different. I pressed my hand flat against the safe door. It felt cold, solid, and I felt something too. Not anger, not yet, just the first spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. David once said, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll handle the bills. You just focus on healing." I was in a hospital bed when he said it. A nurse was adjusting the IV line. My mouth was dry. I remember the light above me flickering. I nodded, too tired to argue. That's how it started. That's how I handed over everything. People think old age means confusion. They think slow steps mean slow thoughts. I've seen the way they glance at me when I pause in a doorway or ask them to speak louder. They think I'm fading, but I'm not. I'm just quiet. And I remember things. I remember that the gas bill in December was always $61. That Walt's insurance check cleared on a Monday in '94. That Amelia's middle name is Grace because it was my mother's. I remember numbers, dates, patterns. I always have. I also remember the feeling I had when I opened that safe and found the envelopes missing. It wasn't panic. It was calculation. I sat at the dining table for hours after that. No music, no TV, just a stack of paper, a pen, and my memory. I made a timeline of every year since Walt died, every major transaction, every loan, every repayment that never came. That's when I remembered the months after my surgery. I'd been in and out of the hospital, first for the operation, then for a minor infection, then for a medication mix-up that nearly landed me in the ICU. During that time, David came by more often, always cheerful, always helpful. He said he'd taken over my online banking to make life easier. I didn't protest. I was groggy half the time, on painkillers, trying to stay upright. But now I could see it clearly. I pulled out the folders from the cabinet in the hall, labeled by year. I opened 2023, then 2021. And there it was. Large transfers, clean, consistent withdrawals, always on a Tuesday, always in even amounts. I looked at the signature lines, mine and David's. His looked real enough, but mine? I blinked. My handwriting has loops, curves. Even on bad days, I don't forget the curl on my E or the open tail on my R. These signatures didn't look like mine. They looked like someone trying to copy me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in bed with my reading glasses and a flashlight, comparing documents, side by side, page after page. Some were spot on. Others looked clumsy. One had my name spelled Eleanor, without the E. A name I've never once misspelled in 72 years. I didn't say anything to anyone. I didn't call David. I didn't march to a lawyer. I watched. I made a new list. This time, only the suspicious transactions, all the ones that felt off. I marked them in red ink and circled the signatures. I called my credit union and asked for copies of older paperwork. They offered me digital files. I insisted on hard copies. They mailed them 2 days later. More forged signatures. I kept them in a folder marked proof. Then I called a handwriting analyst. Her name was Claire. She worked from a small office above a bakery. When I walked in, she smiled gently, as if expecting a confused old woman with questions about a will. I didn't correct her. I just handed her the folder. She pulled out the pages, one by one. Her eyes moved fast. Then she paused and tapped the paper. "This loop is off," she said. I stayed quiet. "And this one?" She pointed again. "The spacing's too tight here, but too wide here. That's not natural rhythm. This is someone mimicking, not flowing." She set the paper down. "These aren't yours." My breath didn't catch. My pulse didn't jump. I already knew. I just needed to hear it from someone who had no reason to lie to me. She asked if I wanted a formal report. I said yes. As she printed the invoice, I looked out her window. The bakery below had a pink awning and tiny chairs on the sidewalk. A young couple sat there, laughing over croissants. I used to think trust was enough, that raising someone with love meant they'd never steal from you, that feeding a child, reading to them, staying up when they had fevers, all of it meant something permanent. But trust isn't protection. It's just hope. Claire handed me the folder. "If this goes to court," she said, "it'll hold up." I nodded. Outside, the wind picked up. I held the folder tight against my chest, like it might blow away if I didn't. Back home, I made tea, sat on the porch, looked at the sky. I remembered when David was 5 and scraped his knee. He came running into the kitchen, crying, and I cleaned the wound while he screamed. When I was done, he sniffled and asked for ice cream. I gave it to him. I would have given him anything. Now he'd taken everything without even asking. I didn't cry. Not yet. I went back inside, put the folder in the locked drawer next to the safe. I made a new label, David, Phase 1. Because this wasn't the end. It was the start. This loop? That's not yours. Whoever did this doesn't write like they read. She said it without looking up, like she'd seen 100 forgeries just like mine. Or not mine. That was the point. I let out a sound. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a sob. Something in between. It caught in my throat and stayed there. Then it cracked. And I laughed. Then I cried. Then I went quiet. I never cried after that. She handed me the folder, said she'd send the report in a few days, and asked if I needed help getting down the stairs. I said no. I didn't need help. I needed answers. I walked out of her office and into the bakery next door, just to buy something, a croissant, warm, soft, folded like a prayer. The girl behind the counter smiled, called me ma'am, gave me change with both hands. I looked like a woman running errands. No one knew I was holding proof that my own son had faked my name on a legal document. "I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end. If you've ever been treated like your memory was faulty, just so someone else could steal, like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to see how far my voice still reaches." I didn't eat the croissant. I tucked it in my purse and drove home, windows cracked, the radio off. I needed silence more than food. At home, I didn't sit down. I moved. I opened drawers. I pulled boxes from closets. I took out receipts, letters, tax folders. If there was a number on it, I kept it. If it had a date, I underlined it. I used a yellow highlighter until the ink ran dry, then switched to blue. I filled the dining table. 2 weeks passed like that. Morning tea. Then paper. Then more paper. I scanned everything into my laptop. I printed backup copies. I labeled each manila folder. My house smelled like ink and printer heat and lemon cleaner. I found patterns. Monica started wearing new earrings every month. Big ones, flashy. She said they were gifts from friends. One pair cost more than my car's tires. David suddenly had a golf membership. Corporate perk, he said. I looked up the club. It costs $18,000 a year. Amelia flew to Bali. Paul got a new guitar. Lily showed me a tablet she won at school. All while I lived on my pension, cut coupons, and reused the same Christmas bows for 5 years. I never asked for much, just honesty, respect, a seat at the table I helped build. Monica always smiled too wide, too eager. She poured my tea like she cared. But I remember her once saying, "You know, Eleanor, if you ever want to downsize, we'd love to help." That was 2 years ago. I thought she meant it kindly. She didn't. They all thought I was fading, slow, soft. They mistook quiet for stupid. I kept building my file. I titled it Personal Records in case anyone saw it. Inside, it had everything: dates of withdrawals, bank logs, emails between David and Monica, with subject lines like trust account update and Amelia funds. They never thought I'd read them. They left breadcrumbs in my own house. I found a USB stick in the junk drawer labeled taxes. It held a scanned copy of my signature, just the signature. No reason to have that unless someone planned to use it. I remembered once, after my hospital stay, Monica brought me chamomile tea. She said, "You just rest, okay? Let David handle things." And I did. I let them handle everything. The bills, the papers, the keys. Now I handled the truth. I made copies of the forged pages. I looked up local notaries and called one on a Sunday. She came to my home Monday morning, sat in my kitchen, and verified that the signatures didn't match. She said, "It's subtle, but it's not yours." I nodded. Then I took the folder and walked into the bank. The same bank where I've had an account since 1981, the same branch, same marble floor, same gold pens chained to the counter. I asked to speak to the manager, a young man named Nolan. He looked about 30, wore a tight tie, and had too much gel in his hair. I handed him the papers. "These documents have my signature," I said. "I didn't sign them." He blinked. "Okay. I want to see the footage from the day these were submitted." He cleared his throat. "We'd have to check our archive policy. Footage may not be available after 30 days. These are from 8 months ago." He shifted in his seat. "Do you have record of who submitted them?" He pulled up a screen, scanned it quickly. His mouth flattened. "It says David Aldridge submitted them in person." I waited. "Let me check with legal," he said. "It might take some time." "I'm not going anywhere," I said. He left the desk. I sat with my hands folded. I counted the seconds, 92 seconds before he returned. "Our records show the submission, but we can't release footage without a subpoena." "Then I'll get one." "What?" He blinked again. I stood up, gathered my folder, and walked out. The floor echoed under my shoes. In the car, I sat for a moment, let the heat rise. I didn't start the engine. I looked at my hands. They used to hold David's fingers when he crossed the street. They used to pack his lunches, iron his shirts. They built his world. Now he used them to copy my name. I pulled out my phone and called Claire, the analyst. "Can you notarize your report?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "I can have it ready by tomorrow." "Good. I'll pick it up in the morning." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, eyes open, watching the ceiling. The shadows moved across the fan blades like slow dancers. By dawn, I was dressed, folder in hand, purse over my shoulder. I wasn't just gathering proof. I was getting ready to bury the lie. She said, "I remember you. You were the one with the soft blue blanket. Always cold, always polite. You were quiet. We liked you." I held the phone tighter. "Do you remember who brought in the paperwork for my insurance?" "Around week 2? A pause. Then she said, "Yes, it was your son, David. He brought a folder, told us not to bother you, said you were too tired to sign, but you signed anyway. We thought you were just out of it." I closed my eyes. She continued. There was one page, long title, something like Property Transfer Authorization. I remember, because I asked him if it had to do with the hospital, and he laughed. She remembered him laughing. That sound haunted me for days. I'm glad you're here. If you've ever trusted someone with your health and found out they used your sickness against you, stay until the end. Like the video and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far my story reaches. I didn't get off the phone right away. I thanked her. I said I'd needed to hear that, even if I didn't say why. Then I hung up and sat still for what felt like an hour. It had been 6 months since that stay. I'd gone in for a minor fall, bruised ribs, mild concussion, but the infection after surgery kept me there longer. The medications made everything foggy. I'd been sleeping 14 hours a day, and while I was floating in that fog, David walked in, smiled at the nurses, and handed them poison dressed as paperwork. I asked myself why. Why go that far? But the answer was simple. Because he could. He knew I wouldn't remember. He knew I wouldn't question it. He thought I'd never recover enough to connect the dots. I opened the folder on the table. The forged signature was on page 5. It wasn't even close to my real one, but it sat next to a notary stamp and a witness line. I wondered if Monica signed that too. Probably. She always said I had too many assets to manage alone. That was her polite way of saying I had more than she liked. They wanted control, and when they couldn't get it through charm, they used my weakness. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and wrote down every time I'd been in the hospital in the last 5 years. I circled the 3 longest stays. Then I matched those dates to the bank withdrawals, the property updates, and the changes to my accounts. It all fit, like clockwork. Every time I was too sick to protest, something of mine changed hands. David had a rhythm to his theft. That's what shook me most. I used to think criminals were messy, rash, desperate. But David wasn't desperate. He was patient. I called the hospital, asked for copies of everything I'd signed that month. They said it would take time. I said I'd wait. Then I called my lawyer. Not the one David knew about. The other one. I met her at church 3 years ago. Her name was Valerie. She sat behind me on Easter Sunday and offered me a tissue during the hymn. Later that year, I helped her organize the donation drive. She told me she did estate law, and I filed that away without saying much. But 2 years ago, after David started asking more questions than usual about my will, I paid her a visit. Valerie was discreet, sharp. She never asked more than needed, and she never told anyone who her clients were. I called her on a Tuesday. She picked up on the second ring. "Mrs. Aldridge? I need to see you," I said. "Soon? Tomorrow morning?" 8 o'clock. She didn't ask anything else. I didn't sleep much that night. I made tea. I walked around the house. I looked at family photos and tried to remember when things started to feel off. There wasn't a moment. It was slow erosion. Trust chipped away, day by day, until the foundation cracked. At 8 sharp, I was in her office. I handed her the nurse's statement. The timeline, the forged papers. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. She looked through everything. Her brow didn't move. She flipped pages like a woman used to reading lies. When she finished, she folded her hands and looked up. "Are you ready to act?" "Yes." "Do they know you know?" "Well, not yet." She nodded. "Let's keep it that way." I left her office with a folder in my purse and a plan in my mind. The next week, I went to dinner at David's house. Monica made roast chicken and handed me a glass of wine before I'd even sat down. She asked about my health, my hip, my arthritis. She smiled like nothing was wrong. I smiled back. David asked if I'd thought more about making things simpler. Said it might be good to consolidate my accounts. Said it would be easier if I just gave him power of attorney. I stirred my mashed potatoes. "That's a good idea," I said. "We can look into that soon." He smiled. I looked at Monica. She was already reaching for her phone under the table. I knew what they were thinking, that they'd won, that I was soft, that I'd fold like I always had. They had no idea what was coming. I stayed for dessert, ate the pie, kissed the grandkids, said thank you, and walked out like nothing had happened. But when I got home, I opened my notebook and wrote one line. They forged my name while I was drugged. That's how much I meant to them. Then I wrote the next step, and the one after that. By midnight, the plan was complete. And the fire in me had a name. The house was never supposed to be theirs. I paid the last mortgage payment I kept the receipt, framed it. It sat in my laundry room for years, right next to the circuit breaker. The frame was cheap, but the meaning was priceless. Now, that deed has David's name on it. Not mine, not ours, just his. My lawyer, Valerie, set the folder in front of me and slid it across the desk. She didn't say anything right away. I could see it in her face. The pages inside confirmed what I already suspected. She opened to the last page. Here, she said. This is the most recent recording. It was filed 7 months ago. You were in rehab at the time. I leaned forward, looked at the line that said ownership transfer. Under previous owner, it said Eleanor May Aldridge. Under new owner, it said David Aldridge. I blinked. Then I read the line in between. Gifted with full consent, no monetary exchange. I leaned back slowly. I didn't speak. I just folded my hands and stared at the wall behind her. A painting of a field, all golden brushstrokes and fake sunlight. I stared at that field until my vision blurred and the walls went quiet. I'm glad you're listening. If anyone's ever taken something you built with your own hands and called it a gift just because you were too sick to say no, stay with me, like the video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far my story will go. Valerie cleared her throat. The signature matches the other documents we looked at last week. Same formation, same forgery. He filed it with the county? I asked. Yes. And no one called to verify it? They had the notary's stamp. They didn't need to. My voice didn't crack. My breath didn't hitch. I just sat still, hands cold in my lap, a heat rising behind my eyes that didn't spill over. I had scrubbed the floors in that house with my bare hands. I had painted every room myself. I had laid tile with a knee pad and a butter knife. When the roof leaked, I paid for it twice because the first contractor skipped town. When David was born, I built his crib in the guest bedroom with a second-hand manual and missing screws. I made that house a home with burnt fingers and bone-deep pride. And now it had been filed away like a coupon. Gifted. Valerie watched me closely. I can begin the reversal process immediately. We'll need to serve him with a demand to vacate ownership, backed by the forged signature report. Do it. You understand, this could take months. He may push back. I'm not afraid of slow. She nodded and reached for the document list. Then she paused. Do you want them to know you're onto them yet? I turned to look at her. No, I said. Not yet. I wasn't done discovering. I wanted to know what else they took. What else they claimed while I wasn't watching. That evening, I went home and walked through the house like it belonged to someone else. I opened every drawer, every cabinet. I looked at everything differently. I saw the rug Monica had picked out when she said mine was outdated. I saw the new espresso machine David bought last year after I told him I liked plain black coffee. I walked to the guest room where Monica had once set up a little work corner with her laptop and candle and phone charger. She had taken over my home with the grace of someone who believed they'd earned it. I stood in the doorway and said nothing. I walked back to the kitchen, opened the drawer under the microwave. There was a folder labeled Home Expenses. I hadn't seen it before. Inside were receipts, some mine, most not. Landscaping, furniture, renovation supplies I never approved, a new stove I didn't ask for. Each one billed to the household account, the one we shared temporarily after my surgery. I opened my laptop, checked the account history. It wasn't just the deed. It was everything. Utilities in David's name. Property insurance updated with Monica listed as secondary contact. A joint account quietly added to my bank portal. My house had been turning into their house, one signature at a time. No screaming, no confrontation, just paperwork, just quiet theft, hidden under smiles and don't worry, Mom. I made tea and stood by the window while it steeped. I didn't drink it. I set it down and walked into the garage. Opened the file cabinet next to the water heater. Found the folder marked Legal. Inside was a copy of my original will, dated 2000. David was listed as the executor. Amelia, Paul, and Lily were listed as the primary heirs. That was my intention. Split equally. A fair inheritance. I wondered if that still held. I wondered if he'd already filed something new. I wrote down the date. Then I made a list. Documents, names, accounts, notes. Every breadcrumb they'd left behind. And every one I'd now collected. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't break anything. I just wrote. That night, I called the notary listed on the fake deed. Her name was Jody. She answered on the third ring. "Do you remember signing a document for David Aldridge back in March?" I asked. A pause. "Yes. At his office. Did you meet me?" "No, ma'am. He said you were his mother and had already signed. I was just notarizing his witness copy." "Did you verify the signature?" He said you were unavailable. I trusted him. I thanked her and hung up. I didn't need her guilt. I needed her answer. I opened a new folder, titled it Deed Theft. I labeled it by hand, black ink, bold letters, neat spacing. Then I set it next to the others. And I waited. It didn't disappear all at once. It happened slowly, quietly, so carefully, I almost didn't notice, and that was their plan. I started digging deeper, the morning after I found the deed. I couldn't sleep, so I made a pot of coffee I didn't drink and opened my old notebooks. I pulled up my online statements, one by one, and opened the drawer where I'd kept the records for years. They weren't there. The file marked annuities was missing. The one labeled Amelia Trust had new papers tucked inside, none of them mine. At first, I thought maybe I'd moved them. But I don't move things. I place them. I stack. I file. I remember. The money I saved for Amelia's future, the college fund that I fed quietly every year on her birthday, was empty. Not low. Not reduced. Empty. Zero balance. Closed. The note said, transferred by joint party. I never signed it. I never saw it. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen, hands folded in my lap. Then I opened the CD account, the one in David's name, but funded by me when he turned 30. He was supposed to hold it for 10 years, use it for the kids. That account was gone too. Closed 6 months ago. I opened my retirement account next. The one I never touched because I believed in leaving something behind. It had less than $500 in it. Gone. Wiped clean, one careful transaction at a time. Each move spaced out just far enough to not trigger alerts, small enough to not be noticed. But together, they bled me dry. They were smart. No sudden spikes, no overdraws, just steady theft, wearing a smile. I went to the hallway closet, pulled down the box marked Statements 2017-2022. Inside, I found everything I needed. The patterns were so obvious once I knew what to look for. The withdrawals matched David's trips, matched Monica's upgrades. I opened Monica's Instagram account. Her profile picture was a photo of her in Venice. The post was from 3 months ago. First gondola ride. Life is for living. Sky. David was tagged. They looked happy. That trip cost more than I earned in a year. David had just leased a Tesla. Said it was for the environment. Said it was on a business deal. Said I wouldn't understand. He was right. I didn't understand. Not then. But I do now. They used my silence as permission. Used my age as a smokescreen. Used my love as a vault they could break open, one quiet lie at a time. I went room to room that day. Notebook in hand. I cataloged what I could prove. Trust fund, gone. Retirement, gone. CDs, gone. Tax refunds, redirected. House, stolen. I sat down and wrote one line across the page in black ink. Everything I built, stolen by my own son. I read it once, twice. Then I underlined the word everything. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt exact. I closed the notebook and went to the kitchen. Monica would be home in 2 hours. I had an idea. A new will. A fake one. Just real enough to be tempting. I typed it up on the same laptop she once called outdated. I listed all my assets. I included a section titled Undisclosed Funds, and under beneficiaries, I left out David and Monica. Instead, I listed a charity. Amelia was included, barely. So was Paul. Lily had a whole paragraph. At the bottom, I added a handwritten note, for review only, not final. Then I printed it, folded it once, slipped it between two cookbooks in the kitchen. I didn't hide it well. I wanted her to find it. I knew her pattern. She always snooped when she thought I wasn't watching. Once, she opened a letter from my doctor and left it unsealed on my nightstand. When I asked about it, she smiled, said she was just organizing things. So I gave her something worth finding. The bait was planted. Now I waited. I didn't need to guess how she'd react. She'd tell David. He'd panic. They'd think there was more they didn't know. They'd think I was slipping, but slipping with secrets. That's what I wanted. Let them worry. Let them wonder. Let them trip over their own greed. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I scanned copies of everything. I backed up files. I sorted folders, gave them plain names. I created a binder labeled Daily Budget, but inside I stored court-prepped reports. If they snooped, they'd find it. If they didn't, that was fine too. This wasn't about speed anymore. It was about precision. The next morning, I heard Monica on the phone. Her voice was low, sharp, fast. "I don't know if she knows," she said, "but she's hiding something." I smiled into my teacup. That was the beginning. She found the will. I'd made it just tempting enough. Just dangerous enough. I walked into the room and watched her pretend to reorganize the bookshelf. She froze. Then she turned around and smiled too hard. "Just looking for a recipe," she said. I nodded. "Let me know if you find anything good." I left the room, closed the door behind me, and wrote down the time, 8:12 a.m., when the trap had been sprung. Now I just needed to let it breathe. I heard her voice before I saw her. She was standing in the kitchen, whispering. "The document wasn't in her safe," Monica said. "It was in the kitchen, hidden like she wanted me to find it." Her tone wasn't scared, it was thrilled. She thought she was clever. I stopped in the hallway and listened. Through the vent, her words slipped up like steam. "Eleanor might be hiding more," she said. "Old people forget things. She probably doesn't even know how much she still has." David's voice was lower, cautious. "You're sure it's real?" It looked real. Why would she write a new will if she didn't plan to change it? I pressed my hand against the wall. The air between us hummed. "I'm glad you're here. If you've ever heard people plot against you in your own house, stay with me until the end. Like this video and tell me where you're watching from. I want to see how far my story travels." Monica kept talking. "We just need her to trust us again. Maybe convince her to update it officially. We'll get rid of that old lawyer she clings to." David didn't respond right away. Then I heard his chair scrape. "She's still sharp," he said. "Don't push too fast." Sharp? I smiled at that. They thought sharpness was my last defense. They didn't know it was my weapon. I backed away from the wall quietly. My heart didn't race. I felt something steadier than fear. Focus. They wanted to manipulate me. Fine. I'd give them something to manipulate. That night, I set the stage. I left bills half opened on the counter. I forgot to turn off the stove. I called Amelia by her mother's name when she phoned. I left the front door unlocked. By morning, Monica had that soft look she reserves for the weak. She made me tea and spoke like a nurse. "Mom," she said gently, "David and I were talking last night. Maybe it's time to simplify things. Just in case." "In case what?" I asked. She smiled. "You know, if something happened." I nodded slowly, like the words floated past me. "That makes sense," I said. David came home early that afternoon. He carried his laptop and a folder. "Just to help you organize, Mom," he said. "No pressure." No pressure. That's what he said when he took my savings. That's what he said when he convinced me to let him handle my accounts. I sat at the table while Monica brewed another pot of tea. She smiled too much, too often. I played my part. I let my eyes wander. I asked what day it was. I called him Walter once, my late husband's name. He looked at Monica, satisfied. They believed it. Over the next few days, they started visiting more. Always together, always cheerful. They brought groceries I didn't ask for, rearranged things, checked my mail. I thanked them. Then I went to my room, closed the door, and wrote every detail down in a small notebook. I titled the page, The Whisper of Greed. By the end of the week, Monica brought it up again. "Mom, about your will," she said. "Maybe you should review it with us. We can help you simplify the language." I stared at her. "The lawyer already has everything." She shook her head. "But that lawyer doesn't understand family. You should have someone who listens to you." "Someone like you?" I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, we just want to help." I smiled. "Of course." That night, I called Valerie. "I need a copy of my old will," I said, "and I need you to draft a fake one." She didn't ask why. She just said, "Come by in the morning." The next day, I went to her office, signed a false document with altered amounts, and recorded the time and date. It wasn't legal. It wasn't meant to be. It was bait. I left a duplicate unsigned copy on my desk when I got home. I waited. 2 days later, Monica found it. She didn't say anything right away, but I saw her pause outside my room. Her voice dropped into that same fake sweetness. "David, come here." He walked in behind her. I heard the shuffle of paper. "She's rewritten it," she whispered. "She's cutting us out." David hissed. "Calm down. We'll fix it." "Fix it how?" "We'll get her to redo it. Say the lawyer messed up. She trusts me more than that woman." I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. They thought they were in control, but they were walking straight into my hands. The next morning, I made coffee and waited in the kitchen. When Monica came in, I said, "You were right. I should look at the will again." She froze, then smiled. "Oh, that's great. I'll tell David." "No need," I said. "He'll hear it from me." By lunch, they had the papers ready. A clean draft, Monica called it. They set it on the dining table with a pen and a notepad. David said softly, "You can sign it now, Mom. We'll take it to the notary later. Easy." I looked at the pages. My name typed clean across the top. New language, new distribution, everything in their favor. I reached into my pocket, pretending to adjust my glasses. But my phone was already recording. I pressed the side button twice. The screen stayed dark, but the microphone was live. I picked up the pen. "Where do I sign?" I asked. Monica pointed to the line. Her hand trembled with excitement. Right then, I caught a glimpse of myself in the window reflection. Calm, composed, unreadable. I signed the fake document with my usual flourish. "Done," I said. David took the paper and folded it carefully. "We'll file this tomorrow." "Of course," I said. Then I smiled. "Thank you for helping me." They both relaxed. Monica reached out and patted my hand. "We just want what's best for you." I met her eyes. "I know." After they left, I sat alone in the quiet. The air was still. The house hummed. I picked up my phone and checked the recording. Clear. Every word. Every lie. I played it once. Then I sent it to Valerie with a single message. Stage 2 complete. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. Their whispering had built this moment. And soon, that whisper would turn into their undoing. I served them papers the morning after Thanksgiving. I waited until the leftovers were packed and the wine had worn off. David opened the door in socks. Monica was still in her robe. They were smiling until they saw the envelope. Thick, stamped, final. David's face turned white. Monica dropped her coffee. It splashed on the tile and ran in a slow line toward the baseboard. Neither of them moved to clean it. I didn't step inside. I didn't say a word. I handed over the documents and walked back to my car. They knew what it meant. Forgery, theft, elder abuse, fraud. All of it spelled out on page after page. I had filed the motion a week before, once Valerie had everything ready. Every false signature, every misused dollar, every whisper I'd recorded. They thought I was bluffing. I wasn't. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't open their emails. They showed up once at my porch. I didn't let them in. Monica knocked twice. "Please," she said through the door. "This is a misunderstanding." I turned off the porch light and walked away. That was the last time I saw her outside a courtroom. The hearing was set 2 weeks later. It was a cold Monday morning. I wore the same pearl necklace from Amelia's wedding. The one they tried to make me feel invisible in. I wore it like armor. My coat was buttoned. My shoes were polished. My folder was full. Valerie met me at the courthouse steps. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. We walked in together. David was already inside. Monica sat beside him, her hair pulled tight, her hands clasped in her lap. He looked smaller than usual, like someone who'd been forced to sit in the truth too long. He didn't look at me. I didn't look at him. The bailiff called the case. We stood. I felt the wood of the chair press into the back of my knees as I took my seat. The judge was an older woman. She wore red glasses and read each file slowly. When she spoke, her voice was firm and plain. "Mrs. Aldridge," she said, "you're claiming fraudulent transfer of property, unauthorized access to financial accounts, and forged legal documents?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And the defendant is your son?" "He is." The room went quiet. David stood. "Your Honor," he said, "my mother is confused. She's been sick. She's been forgetful. We were only trying to help her manage things. We never meant to do harm." "Is this your signature?" the judge asked, holding up the copy of the deed. "No," I said. "Can you prove that?" "Yes." Valerie stood. "We have a certified handwriting analyst's report, notarized," she said, "and we have additional documents showing clear inconsistencies." The judge looked at David. "We also have a recorded conversation where the defendant and his wife attempt to pressure the plaintiff into signing a new will." The courtroom didn't gasp. It didn't need to. The air changed. David opened his mouth, then closed it. Monica looked at the floor. The judge flipped to another page. "And you claim the defendant removed funds from accounts under your name?" "Yes." Valerie passed another folder forward. The judge scanned it. She frowned. "Everything's itemized?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Withdrawals, account numbers, document trail?" "All included." She leaned back in her chair. Then she looked at David. "I see your name listed here as an account manager on several financial documents that were not disclosed to the plaintiff," she said. David didn't respond. The silence stretched. The judge looked at her clerk. "Bring in the analyst," she said. I exhaled. Valerie squeezed my hand. The handwriting expert came in 5 minutes later. She wore a gray suit and walked like someone who didn't waste time. She took the stand and confirmed it all. The E loop doesn't match. The spacing is irregular. The downward slant of the M in May indicates hesitation, not natural motion. She tapped the page. This signature was copied, probably traced, then scanned. "Could a trained observer detect the forgery?" the judge asked. "Yes, easily." The judge nodded. I watched David slump in his chair. Monica didn't look up. I remembered the day I taught David to write his name. He was 4. We sat at the kitchen table. He held the pencil too tight. The D was backwards. I helped him fix it. I told him, if you put your name on something, it should mean something. I wish I hadn't said that. The judge asked if I had anything else to say. I stood. "I trusted my son," I said. "My mistake wasn't loving him. It was letting him believe that love was a debt he could collect." The judge nodded. "We'll reconvene next week for a ruling," she said. The bailiff dismissed us. I gathered my things slowly. I didn't rush. David didn't speak. Monica left first. She pushed the door too hard on her way out. It slammed. I walked past the bench where they'd been sitting. A small vase of fresh daisies had been left behind. Courtroom flowers. Maybe Monica brought them to soften her guilt. Maybe she forgot them. Either way, I didn't touch them. They weren't mine to carry. I walked out with only what I'd come for. My name. My truth. And a silence that spoke louder than anything I could have said. The expert held the page like it was a verdict. She pointed to the loop on the E, then the slant on the M. "This signature was forged," she said. David blinked twice. He didn't even try to interrupt. Her voice was calm, confident, final. She set the document down and opened another. "This one, too, and this one, and this." She kept going. Each point felt like a slow nail being driven in. Monica shifted in her seat. David rubbed the back of his neck. The judge looked over her glasses and asked, "In your professional opinion, were these signatures written by the plaintiff?" "No, Your Honor." "Were they written by someone trying to copy her handwriting?" "Yes, with moderate skill, but poor instinct. The spacing, angle, and rhythm are wrong." "Would someone familiar with her habits notice?" "In seconds." The judge nodded. David's hands curled into fists. I didn't flinch. I didn't breathe heavy. I watched. I waited. David stood. His voice cracked. It wasn't just me. The courtroom froze. He looked at Monica. She helped. Monica gasped. Her chair scraped back. "You liar," she shouted. "You told me it was legal." The judge banged her gavel once. "Order." Monica didn't stop. "He said his mother agreed to everything. He said she couldn't keep up with it all." David pointed at her. "She was the one who wanted the money. She's the one who said we deserved it." "I carried your mother to bed, David. You carried the safe to your car." "Enough," the judge barked. They both went silent. The gavel struck again. "One more outburst, and I'll hold you both in contempt." I sat still, quiet. I looked at neither of them. I kept my eyes on the daisies. The ones Monica had left behind last hearing. Today, they were gone. Only the empty vase remained. The judge flipped through the evidence. Bank records, property deeds, voice recordings. Valerie had done her job. So had I. Amelia sat in the back row. She didn't blink. She stared at her father with a look I'd never seen on her face. Not hatred. Not even hurt. Just absence. Like the thread had been cut clean through. The judge took a breath. "In light of the overwhelming evidence," she said, "the court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Eleanor May Aldridge." I closed my eyes. Just for a second. "Effective immediately," she continued, "the deed to the property will be returned to the original owner." David's jaw dropped. "All funds withdrawn under the joint accounts are to be repaid in full, with penalties." Monica groaned. "The court will transfer control of the trust back to the plaintiff, with the defendants removed as agents." My heart didn't race. It slowed. Like it was settling. Like something heavy had finally been lowered. The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Aldridge, do you have any final statement?" I stood. The pearls around my neck caught the light. "I gave my son everything," I said. "My time, my trust, my future. But there comes a point where silence stops being love." I paused. "From today forward, I won't be quiet." The judge nodded. David tried to speak. The judge raised her hand. "This hearing is adjourned." The gavel hit once. Sharp. Final. I turned to leave. Amelia rose to walk with me. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. David sat with his head in his hands. Monica didn't move. I walked out of the courtroom with a folder under my arm. Same one they thought I'd lost. The sun hit me as I stepped outside. The light didn't feel warm. It felt real. Solid. I stopped at the courthouse steps. Breathed in. They then kept walking. Everything they'd taken was coming back to me. But more than that, something else had returned. My name, my power, my voice. And soon, my peace. The knock came just after noon, soft like a question that didn't want to be answered. I was folding the last of my laundry, plain white towels, still warm from the dryer. When I opened the door, Amelia stood there, my granddaughter, my sweet girl who'd worn a crown of baby's breath just 2 weeks ago, and walked down the aisle without ever looking back at me. She looked smaller now. Or maybe it was just the guilt pressing her down. Her hair was tied in a loose bun, her hands tucked inside the sleeves of her cardigan like a child's. "Hi, Grandma," she said. Her voice cracked on the second word. I didn't speak. I just opened the door wider. She stepped in, holding something behind her back. A paper bag, the kind the boutique used downtown. The same one I remembered from when we picked out her dress. "I didn't know you'd be home," she murmured, though she'd driven 2 hours to get here. I motioned toward the couch. She sat, the paper bag crinkled in her hands. For a while, we just listened to the old clock tick in the corner. Then she said it. "I'm sorry." No preamble, no excuses, just that. I didn't ask for what. I knew. She knew I knew. "I thought you'd been told," she added. "About the tag, about the—" Her voice faltered. I could see her remembering the moment. The tag they'd put on my seat at the wedding reception. The old woman funding all this. That cruel little sentence printed in gold. She looked down, twisting the handles of the bag. "I saw it before they brought out the guests. I thought maybe it was a joke. I didn't want to make a scene. I thought you already knew." She looked up then, eyes glassy, waiting for me to release her, to tell her it was fine, that I understood. I didn't. I just sat there, my fingers tracing the seam of my skirt. I'd gone over that night 100 times in my head, the laughter, the whispers, the sting of humiliation that had burned long after the music stopped. "I should have said something," she whispered. "I just didn't know how." I leaned back. "You were the bride, Amelia. You weren't supposed to know how. You were supposed to see." Her chin trembled. I did see. Silence again, heavy, like wet wool. I stood and walked to the cabinet near the window. From the top shelf, I pulled out a folder, pale blue, with a small ribbon tied through the spine. Inside were receipts, invoices, swatches, the proof of every cent I'd spent for her big day. I took one out and handed it to her. She stared at the paper for a long time before realizing what it was. The wedding dress receipt. Paid in full. By me. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Grandma." I didn't say a word. The ink said enough. For a long time, she sat frozen. Then slowly, she reached back into the bag and pulled out something white. It was the veil, folded neatly. "I found this when I was unpacking," she said softly. "It didn't feel right to keep it." She placed it on the coffee table, beside the receipt. The lace looked delicate in the sunlight, almost fragile enough to crumble. "I keep thinking about you sitting there," she whispered. "With that name tag, I keep hearing them laugh. I wish I'd done something. I wish I had—" Her voice broke again. I looked at her, really looked. Not as the bride, not as the child who once braided my hair while I told her bedtime stories, but as a woman standing at the edge of her own awakening. Shame was changing her, line by line. "I can't undo what they did," she said, "but I want to make it right." I took a slow breath. "Do you?" She nodded quickly. I walked to the mantel and picked up a photograph. My late husband and I on our wedding day. We were young, radiant, and broke. We'd sewn our dreams together with patience and thrift. "Do you know what I learned that day, Amelia?" I asked quietly. "That dignity costs more than diamonds, and some people will spend their lives trying to strip it from you because they never found their own." She looked at me, eyes wide, like she was seeing me for the first time. "I'm glad you're here," I said. "If you're listening, stay with me until the end, because this isn't just a story about a wedding. It's about what comes after, when the laughter fades." She waited. "I'm opening something," I said. "A place, for women like me, and maybe one day like you. A retirement center. Small, quiet, but full of dignity. A home built from respect, not pity." Her brow furrowed. "You're opening a home?" I nodded. "And I'm naming it after you." Her lips parted. "After me?" "Yes." "Why?" I smiled faintly. "Because I want you to remember what it feels like to stand for someone when no one else does. Because forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's teaching." She blinked fast, her breath catching. "I don't deserve that," she whispered. "Maybe not yet, but you will." The room fell quiet again. The clock ticked. The afternoon light softened against the curtains. After a while, she stood and walked to the window. Outside, the lilacs had begun to bloom, faint early petals swaying in the wind. "I can help," she said suddenly. "With the retirement home, with everything. I want to." I turned toward her. "Do you mean that?" She nodded. "Yes. I want to earn it. I looked at her for a long time. Then come with me tomorrow. She frowned slightly. Where? To the site. The land's cleared. The foundation's ready. I want you to see it. Her shoulders lifted as she exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath since the day she said I do. I will, she said finally. I'll come. I smiled then, not out of joy, but relief. A small, tired relief that comes after years of swallowing silence. As she walked toward the door, she paused and turned. Grandma, do you forgive me? I met her eyes. I'll let you know when the first woman moves in. Her tears spilled freely then. She nodded once and left. The door clicked shut, and the house grew quiet again. I stood there for a moment, then looked back at the veil on the table. The sunlight had shifted, landing right across the lace, making it glow faintly. It reminded me of something my husband once said. Don't chase apologies, he told me. Wait for actions. So I waited. I still am. Tomorrow, she'll come with me. Maybe she'll understand that love isn't measured by what you wear, but by what you repair. I folded the veil back into the bag, set it beside the receipt, and walked to the window. The wind had picked up, carrying the scent of lilacs through the screen. The dress she wore that day may have been bought with my money, but the woman she becomes tomorrow, that she'll earn herself. And that was enough for now. The judge called their names like they were grocery items being checked off a list. David first, then Monica. Both standing there in pressed suits they could no longer afford, pretending they weren't falling apart. The gavel came down once, twice, community service, asset liquidation, bankruptcy, justice at last, in the quietest form possible. I didn't clap. I didn't even breathe. I just sat still, my hands resting on my purse, watching the people who once spoke to me like I was their wallet try to look respectable, one last time. When the hearing ended, Monica glanced at me. For a second, I thought she might speak. She didn't. She just gathered her coat and left, her heels clicking down the hall like tiny hammers of regret. David followed, shoulders down, face pale. The man who'd once shouted in my kitchen that I was too old to understand business now looked like a scolded child leaving detention. I walked out after them, not out of spite but out of habit. The world outside felt brighter. Maybe it was the way guilt dims people more than time ever could. I sat on a bench near the courthouse steps. The sun was warm, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like running from my own thoughts. You know, I've learned something about revenge. It doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it shows up as peace. I'm grateful you're still with me. Stay until the end, and if this story touched you, give it a like and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. It means more than you know. I drove straight to the care center afterward, the same one where I'd stayed after my surgery years ago. The one that smelled faintly of antiseptic and overcooked soup. The same room where I'd once overheard a nurse whisper, "She's got money, right? She'll manage." I remembered lying there, too weak to argue, feeling invisible. That place had held my silence, my pain, my recovery, all of it. So when I sold the last of David's unused accounts and cleared my name from their debts, I decided that was where some of the money should go, not out of pity, out of purpose. When I arrived, the building looked exactly the same, dull gray siding, chipped paint, dying ferns by the entrance. But when the administrator saw the check in my hand, her mouth fell open. "You're serious?" she asked. I smiled. Dead serious. We started renovations within a week. The walls were stripped, the windows replaced. The old medical beds were gone, replaced by handmade ones with floral quilts. I spent days choosing colors, fabrics, light fixtures, soft pinks, clean whites, gentle light that made you feel like you belonged. I wasn't just repairing a building, I was rewriting a memory. And when the work was finished, I stood outside the entrance, staring at the new sign being mounted above the door. White letters on polished wood. Eleanor's Garden. That was my mother's name. She used to say, "Plant something every time you survive something." I figured it was time. I moved in a week later. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. I chose a small suite on the ground floor, clean, warm, quiet, and free. Free from obligation, free from manipulation, free from being the woman people only called when they needed something signed, wired, or fixed. Each morning, I'd water the flowers outside my window, lilacs, daisies, forget-me-nots. The air carried the scent of wet soil and lavender soap. Nurses passed with smiles, not calculation. Residents called me Miss Grace again. Not ma'am, can you pay? Sometimes, I'd walk past the old East Wing, the one still being painted, and hear laughter from new residents. Real laughter, not forced. It felt like redemption echoing down the hall. I kept a small box on my nightstand. Inside it were two things: the pearls I'd worn to Amelia's wedding, and the tag that once called me the old woman funding all this. I didn't keep them as reminders of hurt. I kept them as proof that even humiliation can bloom into something powerful when you choose silence over spectacle. David tried calling once. I didn't answer. The next week, a letter arrived. Short, handwritten, apologetic. I didn't open it. Some stories end better when they're left unread. Monica sent flowers, cheap ones, the kind that wilt before the water even cools. I gave them to the nurses, let them brighten someone else's room. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the courtyard, Amelia came by again. She looked stronger now. She'd started helping with the new residents, teaching them crafts, helping them write letters to their families. She'd found purpose here, too. We sat together on the patio. She watched the gardeners plant another row of daisies. "You really named it after your mother?" she asked. I nodded, and after every woman who was told to sit down and stay quiet. She smiled faintly. "Then it's named after you, too." I didn't answer, but she was right. The wind picked up, brushing through the leaves, carrying the sound of soft laughter from inside. I thought of all the nights I'd cried silently into my pillow, wondering why the people I loved most treated me like a resource instead of a person. Now, those same hands that once drained me had nothing left to hold. Sometimes karma doesn't roar. It whispers. It waits until you're calm enough to hear it arrive. A week later, the local newspaper ran a story. Widow Funds Care Center Makeover, names at Eleanor's garden. They printed my picture beside the front entrance. I looked older, yes, but alive in a way I hadn't in years. I didn't care about the attention. What mattered was seeing the new residents walk in, shoulders lighter, eyes hopeful. One of them, a woman named Linda, stopped me in the hallway one afternoon. "This place feels like a real home," she said. "Whoever built it must have known what loneliness tastes like." I smiled. She did. That night, I sat by my window and watched the lights glow across the courtyard. I thought about everything that had been taken from me and everything I'd rebuilt from it. David and Monica were out there somewhere, serving their hours, learning humility in public. I didn't need to see it. Their downfall wasn't my prize. My peace was. When I closed my eyes, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Quiet pride, not the kind that demands applause, but the kind that hums inside your chest when you finally stop explaining your worth. I kept the pearls. I kept my peace. If you're still here, thank you. I hope my story reminded you that silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. If this reached you, like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. I read every word,